Hello, my name is Cody, and I chose to read Science Be Damned: How Ignoring Inconvenient Science Drained the Colorado River, written by Eric Kuhn and John Fleck. This book gives a background on the history of water management in the Colorado River Basin and explores how certain decisions spanning the last 2 centuries have led to many modern-day problems in areas dependent on the water for their survival. Although there is a lot of history leading up to it, the 1922 Colorado River Compact is one of the core pieces of legislation that defines who gets what in terms of water distribution. The 1922 Colorado River Compact was conceived to guarantee the rights of each of the upper and lower basin areas instead of forcing the states into a race to obtain water rights through rapid development. It divided the Colorado River Basin into upper and lower divisions, divided the available water, or what was considered the available water at the time, equally, and charged the states within each division with agreeing on how to allocate the water given. The upper basin states include Colorado, Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming. The lower basin states include Arizona, California, and Nevada. While Mexico is not specifically allocated water rights in the 1922 Colorado River Compact, they are essentially part of the lower basin, at least in a geographical sense. Kuhn and Fleck explain how there are multiple ways to look at the history of the 1922 Colorado River Compact. The first being the conventional history that blames the shortcomings of the compact on insufficient data being available. It claims there was only 18 years of streamflow measurements available, ones that were taken during a time of high flow, and the authors did the best they could with the information that was available to them. This version has largely been the consensus over the years, but the authors do not agree with this viewpoint and instead present their own account of what happened. The real history of what happened, as described by Kuhn and Fleck, suggests that the data was always available and that the decision makers at the time chose to ignore it. These people were not uneducated and ignorant of the science, but instead decided it was inconvenient to mention science that did not support their agendas. The authors assert that the acceptance and understanding of this much less forgiving history is imperative for moving on into the future. The purpose of the book was to provide realistic accounts of the historical misuse of science while developing management policies in the Colorado River Basin. The authors expose the real history of how these misuses occurred and cite important studies that have been available for a very long time but have been largely ignored due to their inconvenience to policymakers. This book also highlights how past mistakes continue to have implications on the future. The authors identify the mistakes that were made and explore how to learn from them so they are not repeated in the future. They also explain how important these lessons are for the future of water management in the Colorado River Basin. One specific topic discussed in the book is the 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact. This compact served 3 specific purposes. First, it formally allotted water to each upper basin state following the 1922 Colorado River Compact. Second, it determined each state's obligation if water use had to be curtailed in order to meet their obligations to the lower basin states. Third, it aligned the upper basin states together in federal legislation that laid the framework for future development. The 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact differed from the 1922 Colorado River Compact in the amount of preparation that was done prior to the formation of a formal agreement. Some of the highlights of this preparation included, in 1934, the agreement to allow development to continue while a resolution was being reached. Each state was given a veto power they could exercise if they thought a development project in another state would use more water than the state would eventually be allotted. This set the stage for a healthy collaboration between the states that can still be witnessed today. In 1938, Royce Tipton released a report that concluded the annual flow at Lee's Ferry to be 16.4 million acre-feet per year. History seemed to be repeating itself, as this study did not account for any pre-1900 flow recreations and ignored the idea of dry periods. From 1946 to 1948, 8 meetings were held to work out the details of an agreement. Although there was no formal deadline put in place, all parties involved understood the importance of getting this sorted out sooner rather than later. An agreement was eventually reached in 1948 that all parties were satisfied with. The results of the 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact were as follows. Arizona took a fixed amount of the total water supply, and the other states divided the waters up based on percentage of water supply. Although the agreement was not perfect, it is largely considered an improvement from the 1922 Colorado River Compact because the commissioners were more prepared and deliberate in their negotiations, they had access to more detailed engineering reports, the formal meetings were open to the press, and the compact was quickly ratified by Congress less than a year after being signed. Although the 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact was an important milestone for the distribution of water rights in the area, Native Americans did not have a voice during these negotiations. While it is true Native American water claims were considered when agreeing on the final allocation percentages of the compact, these topics were negotiated by white men that certainly could not, nor likely wanted to, speak on behalf of the many Native American tribes that were also affected by the agreement. This historic underrepresentation when discussing water policy can even be seen today. In the last year, water managers and the federal government have promised to include tribes in future policymaking negotiations for the first time, but it is still not legally required. A 2021 report by the Water and Tribes Initiative shows that Native American households are 19 times more likely to lack piped water services than white households. Although Native American tribes collectively hold about 1/4 of the rights to the Colorado River, many do not have funds to fully utilize the water allocated to them. This is one of the reasons they would like their voices to be heard at the negotiating table, so they can work out a deal to sell their excess supplies for agriculture, irrigation, and use the money to upgrade their aging water infrastructure. From a geographical perspective, it's interesting to consider where the most rainfall occurs within the states so desperate for water rights. Although the 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact does not mention rain or snow at all, these water sources from the upper basin states provide about 90% of the total water flowing from the Colorado River. It made me wonder if anyone was trying to bypass the cap on their allotment of water by collecting rainwater before it made its way into the river. Upon some research, I found that until Colorado House Bill 16-1005 was passed, it was illegal to capture rainwater in the state. This stems from the fact that although the water has not technically entered the river yet, that is where it would have ended up, and because of this fact, collecting the water could be considered as stealing from the user who has legal rights to that water. It makes sense that geographical areas with access to more rainwater should not be able to take advantage, even if they are able to collect it before it enters the physical river body. From an environmental standpoint, the 1948 Upper Colorado River Basin Compact says nothing about the quality of water that must be maintained in the river. I feel this is an extremely important concept to overlook because who cares if you get a certain amount of water if it shows up in an unusable form? The pollution of water upstream can have devastating effects on the remainder of the watershed. Acid mine drainage originating from the old mines in Colorado Rockies transports heavy metals downstream that is dangerous not only for the fish and other aquatic organisms, but also for humans that use the water for drinking and recreation. Agriculture runoff due to fertilizer use contributes large amounts of nitrogen and phosphorus to the watershed that can lead to harmful algal blooms that deplete the water of oxygen and severely limit the survival of other aquatic organisms. Stormwater runoff occurring due to urbanization can introduce a slew of chemicals and other waste into the watershed, as nutrients, pathogens, oil, and grease, and trash that has negative effects on living organisms. This runoff can also include increased amounts of sediment that may build up and alter the natural flow of the river. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I hope you learned something. I definitely did. Have a good day. Thanks. Bye.